Of the 13 people who died yesterday after part of a church wall collapsed on them at Mpangeni on the KwaZulu-Natal north coast last night. Ramaphosa was speaking on the sidelines of the Methodist Church's Easter service at KwaNzimakwe near Port Edward. 16 others were hospitalized. For more on this, we cross to our reporter Mlungisi Khumalo, who is in Durban. So, Mlungisi, a very good evening to you. What is the latest on the wall collapse?
Well, unfortunately, it has not been a good evening for the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Unfortunately, the Easter season or the Easter period has started off at a rather negative note. Now, you also remember that just yesterday alone, we had 10 people who died in a horrific accidents along one of KwaZulu-Natal's road. And of course, in the early hours of this morning, the media were then told that a church wall had unfortunately fallen and collapsed on some victims of a church up in Langezwe, just near Mpangeni. And as a result, of course, we also now understand that 13 people died. And amongst the 13 that died is a small boy and, of course, 12 women who were sheltered at that particular building. And the latest, what I can just tell you right now is that for now, we've also now established that some of the victims that died in this accidents are just women around the age from 11 years old just up until 77. In fact, just before I made my way back to the office, I then made my way to the hospital, which is Ngwelezane up in Mpangeni. We spoke to a survivor as well. What she told us, she said that whilst they were just trying to sleep, waiting for the service for the following day up in their church, Pentecostal Holiness Church, what then happened, they saw a wall falling on top of them. She then said some of the people, in fact, just fell on top of her, and as a result, she survived. Then when emergency rescue services were there at the scene just to see what had happened to her, that is when she noticed that some of the people that were on top of her were actually 3 ladies that had died, which is extremely unfortunate. So this was Busisi Zigalala. And of course, we've also now established that 2 of some of the victims are in a critical condition, and we understand that they were also rushed to ICU. And we also understand that some of the survivors have now been released at Ngwelezane Hospital. Now, earlier on, we also had a conversation with the local emergency services, who were then able to just give us an overview as to how this horrific incident transpired.
So, Mlungisi, tell us, how did it occur? Give us eyewitness accounts of how the actual wall collapse occurred.
Okay, now you also remember that in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we've had inclement weather for the past 3 days. And now we also understand that yesterday, because there was some gale force wind, and as a result, the winds actually pushed through the wall, and as a result, the wall then collapsed. Unfortunately, of course, like I mentioned earlier on, as a result, 12 people died, including 12 women, and of course, a small boy amongst them. Now, we also now understand that police have now opened an inquest docket to try to establish how this particular incidents happened. And earlier on, we had an opportunity to speak to some of the church leaders, and what they told us was extremely horrific. They said to us, because of the poor signal, in fact, talking about signals, when we were there throughout the whole entire day, we could barely cross to the SABC studios up in Johannesburg due to the bad nature of network signals. So they said that as soon as these incidents actually transpired, they then tried to make phone calls to the nearest emergency rescue services, and as a result, they could not. In fact, they were then forced to drive to the nearest police station, whereby they actually got the police to try and assist them. And as a result of this, of course, they did tell us that around midnight, emergency rescue services were there to try and collect some of the remains, including the bodies of those people that had died, unfortunately.
All right, thank you very much, Mlungisi. And that's where we will leave it. Our reporter, Mlungisi Khumalo. Now, police